Eons ago, in the great before times, where VHS was king, cell phones were literal bricks, people were going back to the future, and every cartoon on TV was a f***ing toy commercial. It was this strange era that gave us He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, a TV show about epic battles, sorcery, cyborgs, of heroes and villains. Then you actually watched the show.
Prince of Eternia and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. Drugs don't make your problems go away. They just create more.
Yeah, He-Man was made to sell toys. That's not a bad thing though. I think very much the appeal of the original He-Man series, that gave you a massive cast of characters, from a prince whose magical ability is to take off his clothes, to sorceresses, to lizard people, to mer people, knights, guys with guns, a guy who stinks, and Fisto. This was a massive sandbox that gave young kids the ability to play however they want. Unlike Transformers, where the concept is very much rooted in robots that can become vehicles, so it's basically straight into sci-fi, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe took a simple premise and gave it limitless possibilities by having every possible flavor of fantasy crammed into a single show and putting it on TV every Saturday morning. Meaning that once the kids had their toys, they could play however they want in any way they can imagine. It basically gave them a free pass to be creative. And the show, while corny and stilted by today's standards, was a cool thing that's legacy endures to this day. And after sleeping for another 20 years, the nostalgia train is back, with nerd connoisseur who happens to make things Kevin Smith helming a continuation of the 80s series to complete the show after 40 years. And unlike She-Ra, which was a reboot intended for a new generation of kids, this show was billed as being for the OG fans, to be a badass sequel, to be as grand and epic as kids remembered it. And of course, being a continuation of a beloved franchise, people fucking hate it. But why? Is it truly as awful as YouTubers make it out to be? Or is it woke propaganda ruining another show with potential? Or was the show any good? Find out here in this week's edition of Is It Criticism or Is It Sexist? This is really just a review. Stick with me here. Alright, so before we dive into the echo chamber of outrage, let me disclose my personal history with the He-Man franchise. I never watched the original series till last week in preparation for this video. It was just before my time, but I caught glimpses of it in the post-Toonami night hellscape stuck between G.I. Joe, Super Friends, and Tom and Jerry reruns. But what I did watch was a 2002 reboot of the series that, as critics would say, fucking slapped. And I watched this version religiously till its season 2 cancellation, where much like Thundercats 10 years later, it was taken before its time. But it still holds up to this day, and I would delete my channel to bring them back. Most of my connection with the He-Man comes from that 2002 show, and all the gay jokes.
For so long now, I found someone to stand by me.
Book your ticket today. Special discounts available for U.S. military and biracial beef.
So that's where I'm coming from. I have fond memories of one iteration of the franchise, but overall I can kind of take it or leave it at this point. Which is why when I heard the series get announced, I could kind of care less. I love me some Mark Hamill as Skeletor, and the animation looked nice, but I had no expectations. And even before this series came out, the usual outrage channels were riling people up. And lo and behold, the series is out, their anger was vindicated, as the rumors were true. He-Man isn't the main character, and the whole thing reeks of forced inclusivity because it has black characters in it, with tons of fake forced strong women destroying yet another series because they're the real feminists. And cruelest of all, in the 5 episodes that we have, He-Man is in all of them, but Teela's the main character, so everything's wrong with the universe. Now, as you can imagine, this show is basically made for bad faith critics who take legitimate complaints, pound them through an outrage filter to make a reboot of a toy commercial into proof of a culture where no one gives a shit about, and telling their followers that this is a personal attack against them and everything they believe in. His anger gets views, which makes them rich. So allow me to say, and I hate to say this to my core, they are kinda right. Not about the diversity or the homophobia, the constant jokes about how women look, the constant insistence that the existence of strong female characters make the male ones look weak, but they are right. That the series suffers from a bit of a bait and switch. Despite not being called He-Man anymore, it did bill itself as the continuation of the series and heavily promoted He-Man as the main focus, only to have Teela take over after He-Man dies. in episode 1. That's jarring at the best of times. But it didn't bother me because death means nothing in fantasy, and in 5 episodes, you can tell that they're gonna bring the guy back. Of course, when the female character decides that she wants out and gets angry, everyone assumes this is terrible writing and calls her a frickin' bitch. Now, of course, there's always that one thing that people are kind of on that gets blown out of proportion and becomes the focus of the entire show, which in this case is the final scene of episode 1 where Teela is shocked at finding out Adam was He-Man while also finding out that he's dead, and her father is stripped of everything. Getting angry, she abandons the kingdom to be a mercenary. People get mad and rage quit all the time. But to be fair, and they are kind of right on this one aspect, the story doesn't do enough to make Teela's walking out feel as earned as it should be. There's too much going on in the scene to make this the big emotional moment that she needs to just walk away. But if you ignore that, the rest of the show is really good. Now, there's only 5 episodes currently available, so I won't make any hard judgment calls on the story and Adam's inability to take 2 steps without killing himself. From what I've seen, though, it's a lot of fun. The major inciting incident of the story is the death of He-Man and Skeletor, after Skullface inadvertently screwed over the plant by poking a ball a bit too hard, with episode 2 taking place a few years after that. The world is dying thanks to lack of magic caused by the Scratch Ball, and Teela has to be negged into saving the world, and it only gets better from there. What I really like though is the contrast between the world as it is and the flashbacks of what it was. See, before He-Man flexed himself to death, the world had a much more charming tone, much more reminiscent of the original series. He-Man's strength and corny personality kept things light in tense situations, but also create a status quo that could only be broken by his and Skeletor's death. And with this being the inciting incident, everyone has to then change and get a little bit of character development with this new world. From people realizing that they were in an abusive relationship to others finding religion. Everyone changes a little bit in this time skit, but not a whole lot. With the exception of Teela going through her Wolverine phase, most of these characters are still their basic character trope selves, which I think is very important because this show made the big choice of being a continuation, not a hard reboot. This show combines both a lot of elements from the 2002 series and the original. And having all that lore and backstory crammed in, you have to keep things simple for new audiences coming into this. I think having just a vague familiarity with the franchise really helps, as they allude to a lot of info that's not immediately present in the show. For example, like people are just desperately trying to tell Teela that her mom is a sorceress, but you wouldn't know the secret unless you've watched the originals. You can watch it without prior knowledge and you won't miss anything major, but it definitely helped me. It helps sell the way the characters talk about Skeletor and everyone's reaction to Adam's secret, or the many characters that pop in with next to no introduction. You don't need to have a PhD in Mattel lore to enjoy this, because even if you don't fully get who everyone is, the fights are great. Not good, great. You see, when I first saw the promos, I was worried we were gonna get stilted characters or weak action. But action is probably one of the show's greatest strengths, with fights that are both equal parts fun and intense. And when the situation is dire, attacks feel more real, taking a more grounded approach, with even the occasional gore that they cut away from like cowards. It really does have that great action cartoon feel that I've been just missing the last few years. Like I never thought, there's never any scenes that are like, okay, they're definitely running out of money like in Invincible, but here, it is just solid across the board, with my only real complaint on the visuals being this one CGI ship that just looks really out of place to me. What also got my attention was how in 5 episodes, it not only had good pacing, it took the time to flesh out its characters. Like Evil-Lyn and Orko both get a surprising amount of time dedicated to them, making me actually care about their personal struggles and backstories, which is really impressive because I hate Orko, and he had a couple scenes that got me emotional, and then proceed to have the best scene in part 1. Making me like Lena Headey is easy. But when you can do that with comic relief, like Orko and Cringer, you know you're onto something special and that people are taking a lot of effort into the writing. And one thing that was really important to me just going into it was that it embraces the show's goofy origins. When something comes from like a kid cartoon or like comic book vibes, there's usually 2 ways they go about it. Either they ignore their corny roots or make fun of it out of embarrassment. Revelations fully cops to the dorky moments of the original series. The bad puns, the one-liners, the costumes, the obvious toy merchandise. It's all there, and while the series has a more modern tone, the silly is still there, which I can appreciate. But the thing that I can appreciate even more, the voice cast is doing a phenomenal job. Mark Hamill's Skeletor is perfect. He's not breaking any new voice ground in his vocal range, but my God, is he having a lot of fun. Lena Headey, of course, great as Evil-Lyn. Chris Wood plays both Prince Adam and He-Man, and he shocked me with how well he was able to adjust his voice to fit both roles. And Sarah Michelle Gellar is bringing the snark and vulnerability as Teela. The show even has the fucking Allstate guy. Like, damn, this is a vocal treat. And nothing against anyone, but I love seeing Netflix cartoons move past the same 10 people they use for all their animated properties. I'd say if I had any problems with the show, is that its dialogue, while good, coming in with just the right amount of self-aware corniness, does have the occasional wonky line, either saying stuff that doesn't need to be said, or getting a little too flowery and thinking it's more important than it is. It's nothing major, it just has at least one line per episode where I was like, you're trying a bit too hard there. With that and Teela's weird exit are my only problems, I gotta say, Masters of the Universe Revelations has a really solid start. To me, it was a natural progression from where He-Man has come as a franchise and does an adequate job at being an open door for new viewers, while also rewarding longtime fans. Check it out for yourself and see how you feel about it. It's only 5 episodes, so you can easily get it done in one sitting. The universe is yours for the taking, so go ahead and check it out. Thank you all for watching. This has been Sarcastic Course. Please tell me what you thought about the show in the comments. Does anyone else remember the first reboot? And remember, you have the power to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. Pass this vid along to everyone who hates the reboot, because I'm sure it will ruin their day. Peace out. Love you all. Have a good one.